Hello Sioux Falls and welcome to this month's Planning Preview. This month's Planning Commission meeting will be held at Carnegie Town Hall on April 7th at 6 p.m. That's downtown Sioux Falls. We always love to have members of the public come and join us for public input on agenda items as well as non-agenda items. So please come down. The Planning Commission really enjoys hearing from you. For this part of the program, I have Jason Bieber with the City of Sioux Falls. Hi, Jason. How are you today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Good. Say, we've got a lot of agenda items this month. Jason, let's go ahead and just get right into it. And let's talk about what we've got going on in the Planning Commission. Our first one is a rezone from the Office District to General Institutional District over at 5800 East 26th Street. Talk to us about this one. We don't normally see a lot of General Institutional District.
Yeah, so this is actually just kind of a little remnant piece that just south of Total Card, and then we know Avera's clinic is going to go out there. And so Avera is rezoning this, and then this is going to be a portion of their clinic, so kind of just cleaning a little swath of something up out there so they can start building.
Okay, very good. So in the Dolly Farm area, that's just growing unbelievably fast.
I know it's so nice. I've been out there recently where you can actually drive now from 18th Street to 26th Street on the roundabout and all that stuff if you haven't been down there by the Casey's.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of nice.
I need to get out there. That's awesome. Next one is a rezone from C2 Neighborhood Commercial to the I-1 Light Industrial District. So we're going commercial to industrial here. This one's at 1308 East Dike Drive, so up north of I-90 by Cliff. Tell us about this one.
Yep, you're exactly right, just east of Cliff Avenue and north of I-90. This is kind of that neighborhood that has a lot of industrial uses, smaller industrial contractor shops and things. There is some leftover commercial that was along Cliff Avenue, but really that whole development has really kind of went away from the commercial and just more of those small contractor shops and different things like that. So.
Sure, certainly, yeah. A lot of industrial up in that area. Let's talk about the next one. Here we're rezoning from agricultural to a few different uses, live work, town home, as well as some single family here. This one is located at 41st and south and a little bit east of 6 Mile Road. Yeah,
this is kind of interesting that we're finally east of 6 Mile Road now with our development. This was recently annexed in, I believe, 2 months ago. And so this would be east of the new Brandon School out there, so actually on the east side of 6 Mile Road. So a new development that they're looking at doing with, some townhomes, some apartments, and then some single family, and really taking advantage of that, those two schools that are pretty close, the Sioux Falls and the Brandon one. So
certainly, yeah, and I imagine we'll see some more projects like that and out in that area coming forward soon.
Yeah, that's another area, if you can get out there and drive it, just to see the amount of rooftops that went up in the last 2 years is insane.
Okay. Let's go down south of town. We're at 1221 West 85th Street. We're going from single family residential here to the Office District. Tell us about this project.
Yeah, so this would be kind of west of Walmart. It was a parcel that they were going to use for some larger single-family homes. They're shifting a little bit away from that, trying to go to the Office District. This is one that they're going to need to continue to work with the neighborhood on. We had a neighborhood meeting. There was some concerns of office, and I think from a city staff perspective, we have a little bit of concerns at office at this location. Just it's not one of the major intersections, and future plans for 85th Street here are not a full intersection. It's more of a right in, right out. And our main commercial areas are 85th and Minnesota and then 85th and Western. And so this area maybe feels more, maybe not single family, I get that, backing up to 85th, but maybe more of like a twin home, townhome type uses if they wanted to get a little bit more lots and more density in there. So.
Okay, good. So it sounds like a good opportunity for the neighbors to come to the Planning Commission and give us input, which we love to hear. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very good. Let's move on to the next one. We've got a rezone here. We're going from a planned unit development into low density and high density apartments. This one's up in the northwest part of town. Tell us about this.
And this is kind of the opposite of what we were talking about with Avera's thing. So this was originally zoned a pedestrian orientated planned unit development as part of our mass rezoning for the entire city with Shade Places in 2014. And really we rezoned that area to this just because they had a bunch of different uses in there, and we wanted to make sure they had a zoning district that allowed all those uses. Well, as time kind of went along, they're not really coordinating this as a overall development. They're more selling off pieces to different developers. You know, some who do apartments, some who do twin homes, some who do commercial. So it's more of a piecemeal development. So it's really more of a straight zoning development. So really we're just getting it from the planned unit development just down to straight zoning. So these uses they're proposing are already allowed there, but it's just a straight. They want the parking for this property, they want the parking for that property, and so it's really just getting it more into a straight zoning district is really what we're doing there. But,
very good. Makes sense. All right, the next one on the list is rezone from RS Single Family Residential to the RT Single Family Residential District. That's 617 East 29th Street, so over by St. Mary's.
Yep, and so this is one of those properties that can utilize that new zoning district we created for lots less than 50 feet wide. So this lot is, I think, about 48 feet wide. Really how this came to us is they actually applied for a variance at our Board of Adjustment because they wanted to do a front porch area that was going to be closer than the 25 feet. Well, as we looked through that, we're like, well, your lot's not 50 feet wide. We should be zoning to this, which then will allow them to do that porch with that 20-foot front yard setback. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody and give them ability to put a lot of love and care into that house and really fixing it up quite a bit. So.
Very good, very good. Next one is 800 South Ebenezer Avenue. This is a rezone from C4 commercial to manufactured residential housing district. Tell us about this one up in the northwest part of town.
Yep, so this is the southwest corner of 12th and the interstate. You know, the southeast corner we're having the new Gage Brothers redevelopment. So really this is one of those manufactured home parks that's been there forever, as long as we've had it. It was purchased probably 10 years ago by more of a retail developer who had future plans possibly to redevelop all of that area. Since then, they have sold it and kind of abandoned those plans. So part of it has kind of maybe been neglected a little bit because why put a lot of money into a mobile home park when maybe that wasn't your future plans with it. So we had a new buyer of that one, and they're actually mobile home park owners, and that's what they do. And so what they want to do is really the neglected infrastructure, start putting some money back into that, get some more homes in there, some new homes, just really try and clean it up a little bit. And as we know, this intersection, we do have some plans for commercial, so we're a little bit cognizant of that. So what we've worked with this gentleman with is to try and keep this zoning kind of south of 16th Street here. So we still have that area from 16th to 12th, that zoned commercial. And so if that ever does redevelop, we'll have significant room then to be able to do retail on that corner. So it kind of makes a pretty good use and a good transition from that commercial. And it's nice that they're looking to make an investment into some other accessible housing within our city. So
sure, yeah, that makes sense. Let's go on to the next one. We've got an alternative site plan to allow parking reduction for a medical clinic at 5900 East 26th Street. That looks like it's for a Vera out by Veterans Parkway, and parking reduction. I don't hear that very often, but tell us about this one.
Yeah, and this is one of those other great things that were added to the Shape Places zoning ordinance. You know, our parking is 1 to 300 or 1 to 200 for a medical office. Well. Yeah. Occasionally that doesn't fit everything because maybe you have, these Avera clinics, they have an emergency room and they really have doctor's visits, and a lot of times now people can do doctor's visits online with COVID, and so they really just don't need that much parking, and we've done it with all of their other clinics that they've done, and it's worked out well. And so it's a way for them, you show us how many people you need or how many parking spaces you need by the number of doctors and patients you see. Let us do that parking calculations. Let us see that parking study and be able to have a public hearing on it. And hey, it doesn't make sense to have 400 spaces. You only need 250. Well, why would we want all that extra pavement, water runoff? I mean, what's the point when they're just going to be sitting open? So just another way for them to be able to go through a public hearing. And really, it makes sense to certain times not to have as much parking. So
it does, and it's great to see that we have that flexibility, that we have that process that they can go through to reduce that. Awesome. Next on the list is a conditional use permit to allow for drive-through retail sales. This is at 6311 West 41st Street, just south of Roosevelt. That one is one we don't hear about very often either. So tell us about this.
And that was one that I kind of wanted to highlight a little bit. You know, so we do allow what we call limited retail in the office zoning district. So this is zoned office, and really limited retail limits the hours from like 6 to 10 or 6 to 11 on the weekends, and has a provision not to allow drive-throughs unless you have a public hearing. And really what us as staff and that book is really trying to do is to maybe limit like a really high intensity fast food restaurant like a McDonald's or Burger King from those, you know, more residential areas. But then we also have the ability for them to go to a public hearing to do some of these smaller ones, like maybe a coffee shop with a little drive-through, where it's not that intense, and you know, they're open from 6 to like 3 in the afternoon, and they can still fit in with the existing neighborhood as long as you do provide, you know, those screening and different things like that. So it's kind of a unique way for them to do it, and honestly, this is a lighted intersection, so it's a pretty good location for maybe a couple offices and then a drive-through coffee shop or whatever you're gonna put in there. So
okay, very nice. Yeah, and finally, let's talk about this one, a conditional use permit to allow human service facility within 1,000 feet of a residential area. That's at 2101 East 8th Street, which is the old school for the deaf facility. And Children's Home Society looks like they're getting ready to go. So tell us what they're looking to do here. Yeah,
so we did this rezoning probably, gosh, a year ago, maybe beginning of last year, I'm gonna think. Time flies, but and so now they're coming back for that conditional use where they have to be, if they're not within 1,000 feet of a residential area, we have to have the public hearing for it, which helps us out quite a bit because now they're almost like got final designs of their building. We have it going over to the police department to make sure a security management plan is there. So it's one of those chances that gives the neighborhood a little bit extra time to be able to come out again or be able to look at their plans maybe a little bit more fine-tuned than when we did a rezoning. And that campus over there has been such a great thing with, you know, the state selling it and what are you going to do with it, and now all these different organizations that kind of do the same thing, these institutional uses have all kind of come together, and I think it's just kind of a cool little campus for everything.
It's impressive. Yeah. It's been amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jason. And thank you for joining for the first half of our program today. You saw there were many agenda items that are interesting to a lot of members of the public. Please come down to Carnegie Town Hall on Wednesday, April 7th at 6 p.m. and give your public input to the City of Sioux Falls Planning Commission. Please stick with us. We'll have Shannon Austin with the engineering department talking to us about the road projects coming up this summer.
A sump pump can be your first line of defense against getting water in your basement.
Don't wait until it's too late to verify your sump pump is working properly. Make sure your hose discharges into your yard away from your house or into a stormwater or sump pump collection system. Never discharge into a sink, toilet, shower, or floor drain. Also, consider a backup system in case your home loses power. For more information, go to the city's website at siouxfalls.org/sump pump.
Welcome back from the break, Sioux Falls. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's planning preview. I love this time of year because the weather gets a little bit nicer, but then we always get to talk about new construction projects that are coming up for the upcoming spring and summer and fall months. With me today is Shannon Austin. Shannon is the principal engineer with the City of Sioux Falls Public Works. Thanks for being with us, Shannon.
Thanks for having me.
Talk to us a little bit about the workload for this summer and what we can expect coming up.
Well, we certainly have another stellar year for street construction projects. We have a lot of new locations as well as finishing up on some of the big ones from last year.
Great, great. Well, let's get right into it. Let's talk about some of the specific ones that we've got so people know what's going on this summer. Let's talk about Veterans Parkway and Arrowhead Parkway out by 6 Mile Road.
Right on, and so those are a couple of my favorite projects. The northern portion of Veterans Parkway from Rice Street to Interstate 90 was open last December, right before the Christmas holiday. And we are, right after it opened, we were seeing about 5,000 cars on that segment, which we were so excited about. And this summer, though, they will be finishing up. They have some work to do underneath the bridge, as well as some lane closures for the pedestrian pathway and the street lights. So there will be some lane closures, but for the most part, it will stay open to traffic. But what we're really excited about is completing or starting the design on the South Veterans Parkway from 57th Street all the way over to Interstate 29. We recently have a signed design agreement with our designer, and we're going to go like crazy to start our design and updating our environmental assessment. So that'll be happening in the next couple, probably 2 or 3 years, and then our first project is proposed for construction in 2023. So we've got a lot of work to do before that construction time frame comes.
Yeah, but amazing project, and so great to see the timeline bumped up from what it could have been.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, great work there, and it's got to be a good feeling to see all that traffic up on the north side already. Even though there aren't quite the actual developments out there yet,
Right.
it's got to be a good sign to see that as well.
Yeah, but actually, you know, that connection up to I-90 helps our Cliff Avenue corridor quite a bit because it takes some of that traffic off the Cliff and I-90 interchange, and then goes all the way down to Arrowhead Parkway. Arrowhead Parkway was another project that we are planning to do in this summer in 2021. We are running a little bit behind because of some right-of-way negotiations, but we anticipate that we'll still bid that project, which happens right at the 6 Mile Road intersection, and then east and west of 6 Mile Road over to Willow Run Golf Course entrance, and then a little bit to the west of the 6 Mile Road alignment. What we're doing is we're realigning that intersection of Arrowhead and 6 Mile. It's askew right now, and with the increased development that we have out there, we are seeing some crashes, and that skew is really difficult for people to see oncoming vehicles.
Sure.
So we're going to line that intersection up to a 90-degree intersection, put up a signal, and it'll really, really benefit the growth that's happening in that area. So that project we hope to bid in June, and it'll probably continue with construction this fall as well as into next year. So that'll be probably a 2-year project.
Okay, yeah, great to see so much growth in that area.
Yeah.
So glad to see you guys are staying on top of it. So let's stay down in that general area. The next one is 69th Street and Sycamore Avenue. What are we doing down there?
Yeah, another just a lot of residential growth as well as the new Harrisburg Elementary School down there. Certainly brings a lot of rooftops. And so 69th Street from Southeastern over to Bonson, we had completed about 5-6 years ago. And then we stopped just because we needed to get the immediate impacts for the growth completed first. And now we're going to finish that on 69th Street from Bonson over to Sycamore. We're going to have an urban section about halfway through, which would be 4 lanes with that median, kind of continue on that section that's to the east of Southeastern over to Sycamore, and then have a 2-lane asphalt roll section on Sycamore and tie into that existing pavement that goes north on Sycamore. So that'll really allow for that traffic to come on 57th Street or come on Sycamore Avenue, continue down to 69th Street, and then over on Southeastern, again trying to help lessen some of those turning movements, you know, that are around those other arterial intersections by creating alternate routes for drivers.
Sure, yeah, sounds like another great project for that area as well. Next on the list is Minnesota Avenue, 57th Street down to Ralph Rogers, a really high traveled area. But are we mostly doing cleanup work to the road there?
Yeah, basically. So Minnesota Avenue was turned over to us by the Department of Transportation a few years ago. And the Department of Transportation, when they had constructed Minnesota Avenue, did not have much development on both sides of the street. And so there wasn't a center turn lane, continuous left turn lane. Well, as we continue to see the development to the east as well as to the south, when folks are driving southbound, coming up through the intersection of 57th and Minnesota, there's just a little bit of a curb and a little bit of a hill where we've seen some crashes of people making those left turns into those businesses on the left hand or on the east side of the road. So all we're doing is adding a left turn, but because the concrete's pretty tired, we're going to reconstruct the entire segment. So that'll certainly be that'll impact a lot of drivers, but it'll be done in one construction year. But it'll be a 5-lane section once it's done. And then there will be a traffic signal at Ralph Rogers in Minnesota to help the bike route as well as drivers. Ralph Rogers is a bike route, so the those bikes can get across Minnesota Avenue and continue on St. Andrews Court, which is a on-street bike route. So trying to do some multi-mode improvements there.
Yeah, but that sounds just great from a safety standpoint. For some reason, when people get to that stoplight at Minnesota and 57th and they're ready to go south, they really pick up the speed there, and they've got the turn, and it eventually gets down to the median and they're ready to get out of town.
Yep, exactly.
So that'll be great from a safety standpoint.
Yep.
Very good. Let's go to 33rd Street and Minnesota Avenue intersection.
So 33rd in Minnesota will be a pretty quote-unquote simple project. It's just going to be a reconstruction of the intersection. Again, pretty tired concrete. We do have to make some ADA improvements, but with that reconstruction, we have some underground utilities, which are always time-consuming just because there's so many utilities that are in the Minnesota Avenue corridor. And with that, we have to close both sides of 33rd Street at different times. So the east leg will be closed for amount of time, as well as the west leg, but at different times. And so that, with Minnesota Avenue carrying about 25,000 cars, that's going to be a pretty big impact. Anytime you reduce Minnesota Avenue to one lane in each direction, there's a lot of congestion. So we certainly are, we're going to feel everybody's pain this summer.
Yeah, so I know last summer, I believe it was, we did 26th in Minnesota. Will this kind of be a similar construction setup and time length?
Yep. We're hoping it's going to go quicker, but again, with those underground utilities, if we have a dry summer, it'll go a lot quicker than if we get rain.
Okay, gotcha. Very good. We've got a couple of projects on 49th Street from Arrowhead to Oxbow and Western to West. Tell us about those.
Yeah, so 49th Street, if you recall a few years back, we improved Louise Avenue from 42nd Street down to 49th Street and reconstructed the intersection of 49th and Louise. With that project, we had stubbed out some very large storm drainage pipes going to the east on to 49th Street. We've had some problems of that intersection flooding, which is why we needed to increase the size of the pipes. And so we're just picking up where that project left off a few years ago, which is at Arrowhead, which is just a little bit to the east of Louise. And then we're continuing with the total reconstruction all the way over to Oxbow, which is right by the park there. And so that'll have a 12-foot wide by 5-foot high box culvert for drainage, which is pretty long and skinny, but it's needed because it has to hold that additional rainwater when it comes off the street. And we just don't have a lot of space to go up because it's pretty flat out there. But that project will hopefully begin as soon as the snow melts and hopefully be done by the first part of September. So not the entire construction season, but long enough to impact our drivers. Okay,
and I know the viewers are probably thinking, hey, 49th Street. Whenever we touch 49th Street, everybody wants to know how long till we go to the east there.
Yes.
Do we have any updates on that? I know it's not necessarily with this project, but can you fill us in on where we're at on extending 49th Street east?
Sure, and so the section that we're talking about is from Western all the way over to Minnesota Avenue. We are going to start knocking off the little portions of 49th Street about a quarter mile at a time. And this summer we are planning to do from Western over to West, which is just a quarter mile to the east and west. But we won't have much impact to the drivers at 49th and Western, excuse me. But we're just going to construct a brand new road over to West. And then next year, we hope to go from West over to Grange, which is where Costco comes.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing as people are using Costco, which is great, and they're not going to 41st Street and Grange, they're coming the back way around over to Western and 50th, and we've had crashes there. So that 49th Street extension becomes so important for people to get out of that industrial park area.
Great. So we're not that far away.
No,
awesome to hear.
yes, it is.
Next is Marion Road from Madison to Maple Street. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so that is adjacent to the new Jefferson High School. We opened it up for traffic last year, fall of 2020, and it's a 4-lane with the median section. It does have a side path on the east side for those students to be able to bike and walk to school, and then a sidewalk on the other side. But we haven't completed those improvements yet because we needed to work with the private utility company of Xcel Energy to relocate and to lower and raise their power lines that are adjacent to the corridor on the east side. And so they will be working, they worked a little bit over the winter time, but they'll be finishing up this spring, and then we will be putting that side path in just in time for the school to open in the fall. And that, if you haven't, if the citizens of Sioux Falls haven't been out there yet, it's a beautiful, beautiful campus out there.
Yeah.
And it's really spurring a lot of that growth and development on that west side.
Yeah, what a fascinating area to watch. I was out there recently, and I felt like I was out of Sioux Falls just because it was so foreign to me to see all that new growth. So yeah, great that we're getting ahead of things out there as well. I-90 and Marion Road, what are we doing out there?
Yeah, so we just keep going up to the north, and we are, of course, working with the development that's going on in Foundation Park. Of course, the Amazon, the CJ Foods, all of those great developments that are going on north of Interstate 90. We're working with the Department of Transportation to put traffic signals up at both the eastbound and westbound interstate off-ramps. And that'll be, those ramps will be signalized yet this summer. And then going further to the north on Marion Road, we're working with the development to make turn lane additions to South Foundation Court, as well as put up a traffic signal there. And then, of course, Amazon will have a traffic signal at their main entrance to their facility. And then as we continue to go to the north, we are exploring ways to get improvements all the way up to the Crooks Renner exit, which is County Road 130. So, but just this year we'll be doing those traffic signals and those improvements at Foundation Court. So a lot of stuff happening also up in that northwest part of the city. And there's just going to be a lot of employees there. And I think they're still planning on opening in this time next year. And so we have a little bit of time to get that work done before we have a lot of employees up there.
Nice work, and I'm sure that's a scramble for everybody to get that done because they are moving so fast.
Yes.
It's amazing to see.
Yeah, that's another one where if you haven't been up there, just drive by on the interstate, and they're starting to look like a building up there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's end downtown. Let's go to Phillips Avenue from 14th to 17th Street.
So south of 14th Street, we've had a couple water main breaks on Phillips Avenue. And so that always, again, going back to utilities, our underground utilities sometimes drive a lot of our street improvements. And we had a water main break last December that was, it certainly kind of played havoc with the street service. And so we are going to replace the water main from 14th to 18th Street, and then also replace the surface. And so that will impact a lot of those homeowners that live adjacent to the park, as well as people that use Phillips for that commuting route downtown. But hopefully we'll be done with that by late October. But it'll definitely be one of the big impact for our neighborhood down there.
Yeah, certainly. And finally, Shannon, if you don't mind, could you talk a little bit about safety for our construction crews out there? I know people tend to forget, especially in the springtime, they're not used to seeing construction crews as much, and they just cruise through some of these construction sites. What do you like to see from a driver's perspective? Is it as simple as slowing down, but can you remind people about the precautions that they need to take with these sites?
Oh yeah, absolutely, totally. Thanks for allowing me to speak on that, because as we go out and we give our street construction updates, we see so many people who are distracted and they're driving through construction zones, and that's probably one of the primary things that if they just pay attention to the signs that are coming up on a construction zone, slow down to the advisory speeds, and just be aware of the surroundings versus being distracted, either flipping on the radio stations or heaven forbid on the phone. It's just so important to have that alertness when you're driving through a construction zone. And we have a very close contact with our police department. If we see speeding vehicles and continually have those sometimes instances that aren't safe, our police department will help us and write those tickets during those construction zones, which are certainly not cheap.
Yeah, well, good. I think people forget that those individuals out there are husbands, wives, and fathers, and mothers, and we need to take care of them, ensure that they get home safe, and not always just focus on how fast we can get through. So
absolutely,
very good to hear, and always remind people of that.
Yep.
So thank you for coming today. Thank you for all that great information, and thank you for joining us for this month's planning preview. The Planning Commission will meet on April 7th at 6 p.m. We'd love to have you come down and provide some public input. Thank you.